River 4 got to go up to Asheville, North Carolina to work with the organization Holding Space. We ended up traveling there a day earlier than they expected us, so our whole journey and our whole project started out a little more chaotic than we would have hoped for. But Asheville was definitely a beautiful place. We got to stay in this gorgeous 9-bedroom house that the co-founders of the organization owned. They had 2 adorable cats. They are taking a nap in their sunroom. It's Jolene and Balut. They were super sweet. Although it was a little chaotic because we got there a day early and we were moving into the space that people live in, so they had to rush to get their stuff out of the way so that we could make ourselves at home. We did have extra time to go explore the neighborhood a little bit before we got started on working on projects. The day after we arrived, we got to explore the community garden that all the neighbors partake in. We got to walk around, get a tour of the different things that they were growing, and meet all of their chickens. That was pretty exciting because a lot of my core members haven't seen chickens before or touched them, so they got really excited when they found out they could pick them up and talk to them. It was very entertaining to watch.
You know why it's called the back 40? That's good.
It's kind of a general term that's used to talk about.
The other neat thing about their community garden is that they have fire-burning pizza ovens or wood-burning stoves out there. So we got to get together with some of the neighbors who knew how to use them and who know how to make pizza, and we got to learn all these new skills from all these new people. And it was just really exciting and a really good way to get ourselves situated in the neighborhood and for everybody to know that we were here and to let us talk about what we were going to be doing while we were there. One of our first projects that we got started on while we were there was helping our sponsors fix up secondhand tools for gardening and for outdoor work so they can use them in future projects. We also got to do a lot of potlucks and just dinners with different community members and different organization members to get to know them and to really spread the message of not only AmeriCorps but also Holding Space. One thing our sponsors were really great at was bringing us to different places and introducing us to different community members who were really passionate about what they were doing. I thought it was super cool engaging with all different kinds of people who were all super passionate. That was the most exciting thing for me, was to find people who really found what they were good at and what they enjoyed doing and who turned them into careers, such as making donuts or fixing up bikes in their backyard. But it was all really cool to see. Another cool thing our sponsors did was give us a bunch of recommendations of cool places in the city that we could walk to. So we were located in West Asheville, so we got to explore the area a lot since we had a lot more free time. We also got to meet really sweet neighbors and friends of our sponsors who would cook us dinners and just have great conversations with us. One of the main projects we got to work on at the house was expanding their little free garden stand. It's like a little free library, but instead of just books, people could put in fruits and veggies from their gardens or food that they picked up at the store or anything really that they wanted to offer up to other community members. So that was super cool and super fun working on. Since we were down by the street, we got to interact with all the people who walked by, who asked us questions or who just wanted to tell us about their day. So that was really fun for me. It was also cool doing a more artistic project and more manual project because it was a lot of fun to work on, but also we could be creative with it. Another one of my favorite aspects of working in Asheville and living there was all the fresh food that we were able to eat, whether it was food from people's gardens or just locally grown food that we could find at supermarkets. It was all super good. Our project in Asheville was also a really neat place for our team to learn more about community values and the values of having neighbors that you can rely on and ask for support in certain situations. So it was really cool to get to know those and to know how to use supplies, such as all the stuff that a coffee shop was throwing out that our sponsor was like, no, we can use those for different projects. It was also really neat being near a city so we could go out and do fun things and explore rather than being in the woods like we were in Kentucky. Another super unique and cool thing we got to do while we were in North Carolina was spend 3 days at Balsam Lake Lodge. It's a nice getaway spot up in the Blue Ridge Parkway, totally isolated. It's one lodge or cabin up on a lake with no other residences around it, and there's no internet access or cell service, so it's really isolated and feels like you're far away from all of real life. But it was super neat because it was very relaxing and very cool to be away from all of the stress that comes with getting so many emails and phone calls a day. So it was really cool that our sponsors got to take us out there. The lodge was a few hours away from our housing in West Asheville, so we got to stop on the way there and go on this really cool hike with waterfalls. Even though it was raining, it was still pretty awesome. There's the beautiful view of the lake from the lodge that we got to see every day when we went outside. And here's a quick tour of the front half of the house that we were staying in. The house sleeps 16 people in 5 bedrooms, but you could really fit so many more people in there because it was such a big space. The house also has access to the lakefront with a little dock, so you could easily get in with paddle boards and kayaks. Here's a picture of our sponsors. That's Eric on the left and Gabriel on the right. They were so kind and loving and honestly some of the best people to work for that I've ever interacted with. They brought me and a couple of my members, Connor and Holly, on this beautiful hike that brought us to 3 different waterfalls. They packed a nice little lunch so we got to eat it when we got to the last waterfall. And it was just gorgeous and such a scramble of a hike and unclear where we were going, where we were stepping. It was definitely a big adventure, but so much fun. While we were there, we got to work with the U.S. Forest Services, or rather for the U.S. Forest Service, because nobody was out with us, but they gave us assignments to do, so we got to clean up the lodge, property, and around the lake. At the end of our 3 days there, we again stopped for some hikes on our way home, even though it was pouring rain and everything was so foggy and windy, you couldn't see far, and it felt like we were going to be blown down the mountain, but it was definitely worth it to still hike up. When we got back to our housing, we found face masks and water bottles left from AmeriCorps, North Carolina for us, so that was pretty neat. A few of us wanted to go paddleboarding on the French Broad River the next morning, but it was pouring so hard that had to wait. We continued with projects around the house when we got back. These are some images of my guys working on building a tool shed to house all the tools that we cleaned up. We got to celebrate our team member Janata's birthday while we were in Nashville, so we had a cute little karaoke night as her request. The next morning it finally stopped raining, so Holly, Selena, and I did get to go paddleboarding and kayaking down the river, and we got coffee at this super cute little coffee shop / garden stand. During one of the weekends we were in Asheville, Mom and Dad came down to visit, and I got to go with them down to South Carolina to visit Dad's family. While we were down there, we got to go on some really pretty hikes. Again, see lots of waterfalls. I realized they're just all over North and South Carolina. And we got to explore some new places, so that was really cool. And I also went on a hike that had 3 different waterfalls, but these waterfalls were massive, and we didn't get nearly as close to them as we did with Eric and Gabriel. When I got back to Asheville, I got to go out to brunch to the Biscuit Head with my core members. It was delicious food and such a good recommendation from our sponsors. And then my parents took me and my ATL, or assistant team leader, out to dinner. This is my ATL, Holly, meeting someone's pet snake that we walked into on the street. She helps me a ton with paperwork and planning team meetings, and planning or leading PT sessions. I know, that's why our third worksite while in Asheville was the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary. This was a green cemetery, so we had an orientation and took a tour of the property and learned all about green cemeteries and green burials and how your typical funerals have a negative impact on the environment. We also got to help projects there that involved clearing invasive species and building a fence that lined their property. The fence was made from local and sustainable materials, so that was pretty cool. We also took a yoga class after our work day in the sanctuary, so that was super peaceful. Here's what the final look of our little free garden stand ended up being. We added an extra roofing to it to cover both sections of it, and we added the wardrobe so people could put in winter coats now that it's getting colder up in North Carolina. While in Asheville, we got the really cool opportunity to take an aerial arts class for one of our PTs because it was discounted because our sponsors were so good at reaching out to the community members. But it was a really fun experience. It was pretty nerve-wracking at first, but we got pretty good at it by the end. It was neat getting to support so many different small businesses while we were in Asheville and getting to learn about their different business mottos while enjoying some great treats. These are donuts that our sponsors hid in the microwave so we would have a treat in the morning. Another one of my favorite hikes that our sponsors took us on was this one that was about 45 minutes away from where we were staying, and it had cows at the top of the mountain. Like, once you hiked up the mountain, there were just cows everywhere, and our sponsors brought some apples with us so that we could feed the cows. I thought it was really exciting. Overall, this experience was one of my favorites. We got to speak openly about death and dying, partake in so much community outreach, and learn how to do so many different projects in more sustainable ways. I thought the city and the people there were really neat, and I can't wait to go back.
Oh no!